Hi, this is Michelle Taylor, one of your co-chairs for the Community Policing and Engagement Subcommittee. Welcome this evening. In the words of President Barack Obama, when any part of the American family does not feel like it is being treated fairly, that's a problem for all of us. This committee specifically will focus on community policing and engagement. How do we develop and build a community of trust on both sides of the equation? We're going to start today by reviewing our agenda. We're going to start with welcomes and introductions of the committee members. We will then
Hi,
review the
this is Michelle
charge and the
Taylor,
purpose of this
one
committee
of your
specifically,
co-chairs
for the
which
Community
is a
Policing and
subcommittee
Engagement
of the
Subcommittee.
Law
Welcome,
Enforcement
this
Accountability Task
evening.
Force.
In the words of
We want to take a
President
look at
Barack
what does
Obama,
success
when any
look
part
like
of the American
from your
family
view
does
and
not feel like
perspective.
it is being treated fairly.
We want to spend
that's a
some time
problem
talking
for all of
about
us.
what do we need
This
to know,
committee
meaning
specifically
what are
will
the
focus-
burning questions that we need to consider? What data does this committee need in order to make better and more informed decisions as we do our work? The fifth part of the agenda, we will then open it up to public comment, which we hope to be able to get to about 7:30 p.m. And then we will have closing comments and our path forward. So I want to start by again welcoming you. No, we're too fast. So we're going to start with the welcomes and introductions. I want to start by welcoming you. I am Michelle Taylor, President and CEO of United Way of Delaware. In this role, I am one of your co-chairs, serving with Sherry Tull. And so I would like for each committee member just to briefly go around. If you could introduce yourself to the rest of the group, that would be great. Starting with Sherry.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Sherry Tull. I am a retired captain from the Wilmington Police Department. So thank you, Franklin Cook, for this invitation. Thank you, Michelle, for coaching this committee. I am currently the president of the Delaware chapter of Noble. And I welcome everyone to the
We could just go, if the committee could just take themselves off on mute for a moment and just quickly introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Allison Abisinio. I'm a Deputy Attorney General for the state of Delaware in the Attorney General's office, and I work in the Community Engagement Unit.
Okay, Ryan Handy, NAACP, been working in the community for a number of years with young adults and youth.
I'm Lynn Keelhorn with the Peace and Justice Work Group of Westminster Presbyterian Church, and I do a lot of work with the Coalition for Smart Justice.
I am Sierra Harris, and I'm here on behalf of the Urban League and Network Delaware.
Good evening. My name is Monica Shockley Porter. I am the Community Relations Director for Dover Behavioral Health in Dover, Delaware, and I'm also here to represent Network Delaware and the Urban League.
Good evening. My name is Corey Priest. I'm the Community Engagement Specialist for the Attorney General's Office.
I'm Elliot Margulies. I am an attorney at the Public Defender's Office and also the Special Litigation Attorney, in which I deal with a lot of the systemic criminal justice issues that I think we're going to get into in this subcommittee.
Good evening. My name is Patrick Ogden. I'm the Chief of Police at the University of Delaware, and I also serve as Chairman of the Delaware Police Chiefs Council.
Good evening. I'm Harry Downs. I'm the Chief of Police at Delaware State University.
Good evening, everybody. This is Josh Bushmuller. I'm a captain with the Delaware State Police. I have a lot of experience in community engagement, community outreach, and community policing, having served as the former commander of Troop 3 in Kent County, where we had a lot of success in those areas, and just having an extensive career and background in community policing.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Wilson Gualpa. I'm an attorney at Morris James LLP. I'm also chair of the Multicultural Judges and Lawyers section of the Delaware State Bar Association, as well as a member of the Latin American Community Center in Wilmington, Delaware.
I'll jump in, Wilson, after that. Buenas noches, mi nombre es Laura Darbe. I work at the Latin American Community Center in Wilmington. I'm the Director of Prevention and Advocacy.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Yasser Payne. I'm on faculty in the Department of Sociology and Criminal Justice. I'm also on faculty in the Department of Africana Studies at the University of Delaware. A lot of my work, a lot of my research program is based in the community. So I do, a lot of, community engagement from a research perspective. And/or I work with folk who are either involved in the streets actively or formally incarcerated, particularly through a methodology called street participatory action research.
Good evening. My name is Frederick Hanna. I'm the pastor of Community Presbyterian Church located in Newcastle. And before I became a pastor, I taught courses at Rutgers University dealing with critical race theory and issues around race and education in the United States.
Can we get to everyone?
Hello, I'm Bernice Edwards. I'm sorry I was kicked off, but my name is Bernice Edwards and I'm Executive Director of First State Community Action Agency, the statewide community action agency, and I work with residents in the community, helping them to become self-sufficient.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Reginald Bernard Daniel II. I'm a senior at Delaware State University. And aside from that, I also serve as a chair member on the Youth Justice Committee for the Criminal Justice Council. I also serve as acting president of the Delaware State University Speech and Debate Team.
Welcome, Reginald. Have we heard from everyone on the committee?
Yes.
Okay, well, welcome. So we'll be spending some time together over the next few months. I look forward to, Sherry and I look forward to working with you. We'll now kind of review the charge and our purpose of this committee. Is there another slide behind this or no? There we go. So the background is we were created by fiscal 21 grant and aid legislation, section 38 of the Senate Bill 260. We are one of 4 required subcommittees of the Law Enforcement Accountability Task Force. And this specific committee is charged to study, making findings and recommendations to the legislature, governor, and law enforcement agencies. And related to, which is interesting, our work is really to ensure that community-oriented policing policies are consistent with the report on the 21st century policing, an expansion of citizen-involved public safety outreach across the state, as well as increased crisis intervention services and ongoing proactive mental health care for police. And I have to just tell you, that is a mouthful. I think this whole group, if you were like me, we received the final copy of the report of the 21st century policing, which is about 100 pages. Did everyone get that in advance? Was that part of our pre-read? Yes, right?
Yes.
I'm sure everyone has dived in and has started to read it. It was one of the things of the feedback that I have heard from other groups is sometimes, right, we're trying to inundate so much with so much paper and information and data that it can, instead of helping to clarify, it can help to make it more confusing and seem overwhelming. What we will need to try to do, and I heard from a couple of you on the committee, one of the things that we did gather in the survey data from you was, where was your area of expertise? Where do you think that we can best leverage you? Sherry and I will be going through that because I think in some cases like this President's Task Force on the 21st Century Policing, 100 pages, we may need to lean on a couple of you, leverage you to help us to really to figure out how do we distill it down. Like, you know, what are the components of it that we really need to be able to pay attention to as it relates to our work specifically? Because I don't want it to seem so overwhelming and so complex that we don't accomplish what we intend to do. And so part of tonight assignment was, you know, for us, one, to kind of get to know you and better understand the collective of this group, to hear from you specifically on what is important to you, or what is, from your lens and perspective, what we should be doing. At this point, Sherry Tull is going to help to facilitate agenda item 3 with you regarding success.
So good evening, everyone. It's nice to see that we have many different professions here. That means we'll have a lively discussion as to our charge. So community policing and accountability, our subcommittee, I'd like to hear from all of you, or some of you, what do you think success should look like in this area? In no particular area, whoever wants to start first. Okay.
All right, so I'll start. This is Corey Priest. Hey, Sherry.
Hi, how are you?
Pretty well. I'm doing pretty well. So a question before I start. When we talk about policing, are we? Of course, we're including law enforcement and police municipalities across the state, but are we including COs and POs along with that? Because I think we could think about, you know, community policing in terms of probation officers too. That's just a thought as we you know, go through our discussions and talking points. Can we or should we include POs and COs too?
Corey, I'll just say this as we capture this on the.
Michelle, what do you think?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Corey, I just wrote it down on the second part of the discussion. We're actually going to talk about like what questions I sent out to you in advance, some that I had. I just jotted that one down. I think that's what one of the things we should come back to. So not that we have to answer it at this moment. One of the things that we're going to do next is try to identify what questions do you have that we need to take into consideration, right? Or what data do you think that we need to know? That'll be part 2. Right now, what we really want to hear is said, you know, we're all a part of this committee. We are volunteering our time. You know, this is important work as the baton is in our hands. The question really on the table is, what at the end of the day, right? What does success look like to you?
I would say, Ron Handy, I would say one thing for success is for the community to actually take ownership and accountability for some of the things that are going on outside of the police officers, and that we got to change this, the narrative from police enforcement to something else, services or something else, where doesn't feel as though that they're coming in to take charge of the community. They're assisting the community in taking charge of whatever's going on in that community.
Okay. Dr. Payne, I see you.
Hello. So I'm trying to still, you know, be honest with you, for right or for wrong, I'm still trying to, you know, just, you know, get the temperature of the group, see where we at with it, what our appetite is for, you know, what's the bandwidth of this. So I guess success is part of my understanding of this. You know, what's our bandwidth? What are we really here trying to accomplish? You know, you know, so I think those are very real questions that will have to be dispelled at some point. Right. And I think sooner is probably better than later, although I'm not encouraging anyone to rush anything. But with that said, to me, success is defined by the people. It starts there. Mm-hmm. I'm saying, like, and I mean, when I say people, I mean poor Black people too. Like in places like Riverside Projects, Southbridge Projects, right? Folk who are living on the margins of life. At some point, they have to be part of this discussion. If this is a serious discussion. Right. And I assume that is. I'm not being sarcastic. I'm just, you know, I think we need to get this in the air. So I think, you know, for me, success at some point has to incorporate a robust partnership between, you know, city and state, nonprofit executives, alongside with a robust set of folk from the neighborhoods weighing in with real contributions to the discussion. And we got to make room for them at the table.
I agree with you, Dr. Frank. Also, we have to learn how to accept them where they at and not judge them based on our level of understanding, but really accept them where they at and try to understand their perspective on things, not how we look at it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Both make great points.
I think that,
Well, this is Bernice Edwards, and I think we need to have a coordinated effort, not only with the police, but the community, but also people have a voice and be able to express their feelings and how we can all work together.
Hey, Sherry, it's Pat Ogden. Can I chime in?
Absolutely.
So I think success would look like really building true trust with the community. And I think from a policing perspective, after doing this for the last 33 years, there's two vital components to that. One is accountability within police departments, and the other is transparency. So by accountability, some of the things I think we need to work on is not all agencies within the state are accredited, so they're not subscribing to best practices and policy. I think and I'm working with the Attorney General's office right now to develop a statewide body-worn camera program and repository. I think that's important. It's important for all police agencies to have an early warning system in place so that if an officer is using force or involved in pursuits or having citizens complaints, that there's accountability there for the department to be aware of it. And transparency, publishing a daily crime log so that people in the community know what's going on, having crime mapping. Here at the University of Delaware, we're involved in the Police Foundation's open data portal. On our open data portal, we publish our department demographics, our citizens' complaints, our use of force issues. All those kind of things are transparent to the public. And I think with that, that's going to build some trust if agencies are more accountable and transparent. Another issue is I commend the Wilmington Police Department. They have their use of force policy published on their website. A lot of agencies are doing similar things. So I think things like building trust and accountability are going to go along, or transparency and accountability are going to go a long way towards building trust, and that's what success would look like at the end of this.
Hey, this is Monica. One of the things that I notice that keeps coming up in the discussion is just trust and partnership. One of the things that I thought about is just changing and shifting the relationship as well, because before you can build the trust and before you can have the partnership, the relationship has to change as well. So whatever needs to take place to change and shift the relationship that police generally have with the communities that they serve, I think we can get to the trust and we can get to the partnership if that relationship piece changes.
It's kind of hard to establish trust in a community if you don't engage them. Somehow we have to figure out a way to engage them on their level or of needs so that they can truly trust us, not just be saying things and not hold us accountable for the things as well. Good point. Mr. Elliott, did you have a point?
I think that a lot of the points do have a lot of overlap, so to some degree this has been considered already. But I think that creating a successful community policing dynamic is also going to require us to consider indirect impacts of community policing. And I'm specifically concerned about the economic impacts on those communities, especially since Dr. Payne pointed out that that the communities that I think to some degree we're primarily concerned about are the ones that are very much on the economic margins of society. And so I think we're going to need some real data and be able to think long term about how this is going to either positively or negatively impact their money, their housing, their education, and all of that. Thank you.
I think what we're working towards, we're all saying, is that building the trust between the community and the police. And there will be a lot of change in culture that gets us there. But I think what success looks like from this subcommittee are very specific policy recommendations that we think are going to help get us there. And those specific policy recommendations have to come out of our really, hopefully, good discussions that where we can re-envision what the role of police and probation are in our community, so that we can talk more about, you know, pre-arrest diversion programs and what that would look like, and other things that would have, you know, potentially significant impacts that would be real policy changes in what we do.
I also want to suggest, I mean, just given the moment, given where we're at in the country right now, given where this issue is in Wilmington, you know, among other areas of the state. I'm not sure who said that because I can't see my screen, but I think that was Len. But I'm also going to encourage us to think about change or recommendations beyond narrow policy prescriptions, right? That's part of the problem. That's part of the reason why we're in the problem that we are. And I am down for policy, and I definitely get the logic and the argument. So I'm not saying do away with that. But what I am also saying is that at some point we're going to have to reimagine what's possible, right? We're going, and so we know what's available, right? The mechanisms, the policies, the arguments, the meaning traditional ones, is not working, right? These communities are angry, and they're not looking for a Band-Aid approach. That will actually infuriate the situation, right? And I hope our arrogance doesn't trap us into staying with like traditional forms of help, right? We're gonna have to actually reimagine what community engagement means, right? We're gonna, and that's why I'm saying at some point we got to get folk from Riverside Projects and Bethel Villa and places like Southbridge Projects. We ain't got to talk down to them. We ain't got to talk up to them. These are really bright and smart people. They're just poor, right? And we got to get them in the room so that they can force us to reimagine, right, what's possible outside of this traditional paradigm. If we get stuck in kind of narrow traditional notions of policy, well, we're gonna end up suggesting what we've always suggested in the last other 5 meetings or reports or commissions, right? And we're not gonna be in a position where we can reimagine something that's new or different, or something that somebody can say in Southbridge Projects like, wow, that's a really good idea. Not, you know, at some point we're gonna have to get real buy-in from them, right? So all I'm just warning us at this very early juncture, I'm just warning us, let's have a serious conversation. Let's not get stuck in the kind of narrow forms of help, because these communities are tired, right? And that means, what does community engagement, like how can we reimagine, right, a police department that is predominantly 71% white in Wilmington, which is, I think, interesting. We got to talk about it. What does it mean to really diversify and for us to recommend, right, a real program around really diversifying the police force so that reimagining community engagement can even be possible? I think that's what the community wants us to be talking about tonight. It's like that kind of idea, big, bold, brave. Why not?
Dr. Payne, and not only in Wilmington.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
I want us to look statewide.
Yes, ma'am.
I want this to be not only because if you're looking at Delaware is very small. However, we're so diverse and spread out. So I want to make sure to be on this committee, when we start to talk and what we are doing, we are taking in considerations all communities throughout the state of Delaware.
Yeah, Bernice, I was going to bring that up. I just wanted to remind you, sir, that this is like a statewide committee, and yes, Wilmington is a part of it, but there are 48 policing jurisdictions, right? And we sent those out to you in advance. And so we're really thinking about what does it mean from urban, rural, suburban, everything else in between as it relates in our state. And that includes the voices of the state, right? So, you know, we need to hear from the people of Wilmington, but we also need to hear from Newcastle and Milford and Sussex and Seaford
Exactly.
and
That
Newark
was
and
my
everything
point.
in between. So we will make sure that that happens. And so I just want to keep us centered. That said, this isn't about Wilmington, it's about Delaware, Wilmington being a part of it, but just, you know, when we look at this, we just need to be thinking about solutions across the board.
Totally.
But I think this is Pastor Hannah from Community. I think that's an important point to make because policing, community policing will be very much contextual. So it's going to look different in Newcastle on Rogers Road, where I am, versus how it looks downstate in a rural area. So it can't be a one size fits all. There's no one policy that works across the board. I think we're all probably in favor of a lot of the police reform initiatives that we've heard, but I agree with Dr. Payne. For me, speaking contextually for who I am, what I look like, where I come from, where I pastor, where I work, what my children look like, I want to have more than institutional relationships. I want to have relationships on the ground. I hope that this committee opens up opportunities for me to be out there with people. I don't like this language. It even comes down to language. I don't like this language of on their level. What does that mean? You know, so, you know, even things like that, we've got to deal with how we see people, how we see one another, and our ability to engage with one another as human beings, with our own unique situations and our own unique challenges, and how we work together to overcome those challenges as it relates to policing. I'd like for somebody to be able to say, something's going on over here. Let me hit Pastor Fred on his cell. And, you know, let's see if we can get some people together to have a conversation and see if we can come up with a solution.
I actually was working on something like that over the course of the time before I was aware of this committee. I was working on a bill that I came up with, and that's still in its earliest stages. But the idea of it did take into account what you said and what you said, Mr. Payne, that the needs of each county and the needs of each town within Delaware vary a lot. And so the idea was creating sort of a state department of law enforcement accountability. And the idea was that each county would have review boards that were populated with people who lived in that county, people who knew what it's like to live in Sussex, what's important in Sussex, what do the people who live in Sussex think is important to them, what do the people who live in Wilmington, Newcastle think is important to them, how do they need to handle those issues, and what needs to be done in Kent County.
This is Harry Downs. I think a lot of people hit on this point, but for me, I have a lot of ideas what I determine success is. I'm sure everybody here has a lot of ideas what determine success is. But the main thing for me, and the first thing I would like to know is what is the community? How do they determine success? And I think if we listen to what they say and how they determine success, it'll give us a great path of where we should be going.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Hey, I'm sorry, this is Josh Bushwell, the State Police. I just want to follow up on Harry for a moment. And, you know, the Delaware State Police has a unique perspective because we provide policing services across the entire state, all the way from Newcastle County to Sussex County. And one of the things we did back in 2014, when I had the opportunity to stand up our community outreach unit, which was a statewide unit where we focused on community engagement and community related programs, is I did focus groups in each county to the point that several of you are making. The needs are different in the communities. The wants are different across the state, up and down. So we held focus groups in each counties to determine specifically what is it that they're looking for from their police agencies. I can speak specific to the state police. And when we did that, we found precisely what many of you are saying, is that the communities across our state are different. They have different needs, they have different wants, which means they're going to have different successes. And then we kind of tailored our approach towards those communities based on the feedback we got from these communities. So we had these focus groups, and we met on a quarterly basis for this particular purpose. And as far as the main thing we tried to do to engage the community is to get troopers and police officers to understand how to engage the community in a non-traditional law enforcement way. Typically, law enforcement is used to an enforcer mentality versus a guardian mentality. How can we get in our communities where we're not going in for any type of specific service? And we developed and created several programs around that within our elementary schools, our middle schools, our high schools, and our other communities. And I'm very proud to say we had a lot of success with that while I was the commander of Troop 3 in Kent County. But what I will tell you is that if you don't have the buy-in, if you don't have the leadership supporting this and understanding this and making it a priority, it will not last. And unfortunately, we did not see some of the success that I was able to see, under my command in other parts of the state. So one important theme is, if you really want to make change, you really want to adopt this style of policing, it must come from the top of the organization down with the support. So I just wanted to bring that to perspective.
I have a question. Elliot Margulies again. First of all, that initiative does sound really amazing, and it's great to hear that there was some success in it. I would imagine, and this is very much me imagining because I don't actually have the data, that there are huge, huge portions of our communities that have, to some degree, just right or wrong, lost faith in policing. They've lost faith in the legislature, and they're the ones, they're not going to participate in those surveys. They're not going to go to those quarterly meetings, and they're not going to be on this Zoom. So when we say we want to define success based off of community, I think that we do need to recognize that we have already sort of segregated ourselves from huge portions of the community, and we need to find a way to bring those voices in as well.
I suggest, based on that, because that's been my argument. Some people aren't going to show up for the meeting. They're just not, and the people who usually show up are the same ones that talk about a problem that they really not connected to. I believe if we had a crew of people that will go out and interview them on camera, they don't have to put their face to the name, so we can actually hear what they're talking about, where they're comfortable at. They're comfortable in their community or wherever they at. And they're more likely to speak to a person that way to get it out, than come to a meeting or fill out a survey, because now we're approaching them in their comfort zone. And that is showing them, look, we're willing to do this. We're willing to come to you. And then that kind of gets buy-in for them to say, well, this is what's really going on.
That's precisely one of the things we found when we did our focus groups, which is why we specifically took this to the communities. We came up with a concept of this neighborhood conversations, right? Every time you wanted to have a meeting or some type of thing, we were always asking the people to come to us, to the police. But we need to go to them. We need to go into their homes, into their communities, and speak to them on their turf and in their ground. So we developed this idea of this neighborhood conversations, and we would go into a community and ask a neighbor to host us, and we would go into their home, and then they would assist by inviting members of the community to come talk with us.
Hi, this is Michelle. This is Michelle. I'm just doing a pulse check real quick. One time. One is, when you're speaking, can you please remember to just acknowledge who's talking, just so that the rest of the group is aware. And then secondly, I'm throwing it back to Sherry. I'm taking chair privilege rights for a moment. I just want to make sure we've heard from everyone. There's 20-something people on this group. I've been taking notes. I think we've heard from about half of the people so far. So I just want to encourage the people who we haven't heard from yet, if you could chime in.
Hi, this is Allison Abisinio from the DOJ. I don't know that I necessarily have anything new to add to what people have already said, but I am in huge agreement that we need to go to people instead of asking them to come to us, because we will get the same audience. So I'm in the community engagement unit at the DOJ, and we go on semi-regular empowerment walks in the community. And it's really just the unit, which is comprised of a couple of people. And we go out into certain neighborhoods, primarily in Wilmington. And sometimes we pass out brochures about our unit. Sometimes we pass out flyers about events that we're working on with other agencies. And sometimes we just walk around and talk to people. And I think that that would be something to consider with this group, is organizing some type of, regular walking about the communities in this state to actually zero in on people who are not going to participate in scheduled meetings like this. So I know that other members of this subcommittee have mentioned something similar, but I just wanted to show my support for that idea. Thank you.
Well, this is Bernice Edwards, and I can say, with the strong community initiative that we had years ago with the partnership with the state police, that's what was exactly happening. The police was coming into those prospective communities, hearing from the residents in those communities. I think we need to meet people where they are and not always telling someone what they need to do or what needs to happen. Let them have a voice, and you'll get more participation from our community residents.
Hi, this is Sierra speaking. I pretty much echo some of what some folks mentioned earlier, specifically resonating with what Yasser said. I think that we need to, and I'm still trying to figure out, what the temperature is here, because I think that'll determine success, especially if we are considering getting people in the community on and into these conversations. But we really need to reimagine even what engagement looks like. We've seen, going into community and handing out brochures and doing this and having conversations, and those things, have they worked? And it looks different everywhere. So I hope that we are able to really just rethink and come up with new innovative ideas to truly meet people where they are, and not just meet them where they are and leave, but meet them where they are and be able to continue to grow relationships.
Hello, this is Wilson. Just echoing what everyone said. An important thing that I think should that would determine the success is sustainability. Whatever we are able to come up with, the success is if it's able to sustain throughout the test of time. Are what we want to accomplish. We need to reach out to future generations, either through new platforms like social media, or we need to incorporate, future generations and the youth in the area, because if you see from the violent crimes, it's affecting our youth as well. And we have to take into account how to reach out to them and the new age technology that we have available. I mean, look at us today. Right now, we are in a Zoom meeting discussing this issue. And we have to, build the trust at an early age of the community. That way, it continues to flourish as they become older. And that's a way to sustain what we're trying to do and promote change. Thank you.
Your point is well taken, everyone. Before we continue, I've been asked that when you speak, could you please turn your videos on so that the public can see you? And so that we'll know who you are as well. Anyone else that we have not heard from?
Yeah, I want to jump in. I want to first start by saying that the report that you all shared with us, I thought was pretty useful. And I think I'm a big believer in not reinventing any wheels. And, there's a section in there, forget exactly what they call it, but it's about community policing. And it gives us very specific action items that we can take. I think there's something like 20 or 20 something. So I recommend you all jump to pages 92 to 94 in there, and you'll see all of those action items that they list out. And one thing that they propose is the suggestion, and then they give you actual action items, which are concrete deliverables. So to me, success would look like implementing a number of those, and we can determine, what we think is feasible and in what span of time. But I think it would be good to set some kind of goalpost, and using that document is a good starting point.
I agree, definitely agree. Before I make my comments, is there anyone that has not had a chance to speak?
This is Corey. I did speak earlier, but I do want to touch on a couple of points. And Dr. Payne and the rest of you guys hit on a lot of great points. I also think success looks like, short and long term is that, in order to change the culture in some of these police agencies, to hire some of these folks in our communities who typically wouldn't get these jobs for whatever reason. It's tough getting into these jobs with, I know Kathy Jennings was bold enough to hire me, someone who's formerly incarcerated, now works for the Attorney General's office. And so I think if some of these agencies are bold enough to hire the target population, then we're working with.
Point well taken. So just before we move on to part 4 of our agenda, there's some of the ideas that everyone shared tonight has been absolutely wonderful. Definitely the heart of it is that we definitely have to go to the community and get their input. I like the idea about the focus groups and the policy recommendations that you mentioned. It is just one community. This is for the entire state. So what might look different up here in Claremont might definitely look different down in Milton. Not trust the process. They may not trust that they're going to be heard, but if we go to them, that we're definitely going to be able to hear what they have to say. Definitely have neighborhood conversations and organizers walkabout within the communities. I don't know within the time constraints that we have for this community, for this subcommittee, if we'll have that opportunity that you guys have come up with thus far, and I really appreciate your buy-in, because all of your definitions of success are definitely good, and they're all definitely great ideas. And as you can see from 20 of us, success has many different definitions as well too. So Michelle, are you still here? Because it's about 6:40.
Yep, I'm still here. Here. Thank you, Sherry. I echo the comments that were made. Someone said this: we have 24 different members or 25, whatever we have, what we didn't want to have, which, it's still some ways apart. And Yasser, I heard you loud and clear, that said, I'm really trying to get a pulse from the group, right, to see how bold and courageous we are willing to be as we define success. But I'll also go back to our charge. So our charge is to ensure that community-orienting policing policies are consistent with the report of the 21st century policing. And that's part of our charge. And there are lots of recommendations, as you heard, in this document. And I am also all for not reinventing the wheel if we don't have to. It looks as if there was a national group that took a lot of work and consideration of coming up with, what does ideal community policing and engagement look like. I had a chance to speak to some of our local law enforcement officers who believe that this document is, what they would consider to be, I would call it, in my words, a gold star, right? If we could, as a state, actually get to this point where we are living and executing. I also think that I heard that as a state, there's a lot of great things in here, but we aren't living them for Delaware. And so part of the charge, from my perspective of what success looks like, is trying to figure out how close can we get to not just, what Delaware sees on its own, even as we reinvent how we live this, but how do we compare against the standard of what great community policing and engagement looks like. And so, we'll have to work our way through. Again, Yasser, I'm identifying you, not picking on you, but identifying I too, as I pondered this role in your pre-read, I sent to you, Sherry and I thought through some questions. I think that I probably have more questions than answers, but I thought that one of the things that would be helpful, and I captured a couple of them since you have added around, what is it that we need to know? Like what's the imperatives that we need to, what burning questions, platforms do we have? I heard how bold do we want to be, right? What's the real bandwidth of this group? What's the appetite? I kind of also called it, what's the big elephant in the room too, that we're not talking about, that we need to talk about if we're really, really going to get progress. And so what is that? Is one of the things that I threw up. What are our blind spots? We heard Representative Cook talk to us in the task force meeting about some people believe, right, we're going to fail before we even get out of the gate. And so, I believe, right, that we're not going to fail, that we're going to be intentional about what we're going to achieve, right, that we're going to come out of this better than what we went in. And so in order to do that, I do think, we're not all going to agree. I think you got to take 20 something different points of view in here to come up with some consensus about what will our path be. And so tonight really is about listening. But some of the questions that I came up with that we were talking about is, so around data, what additional information do we need to know? Like, I do think we need to be a little bit data driven. From my perspective, in an ideal world, out of the 48 policing jurisdictions, we would actually be able to see and understand what's already I have to believe what's working well, or how do we compare against this document? If we were to give ourselves a scorecard, how would we rate? And which areas? And what's so interesting, we just talked about, because there's so many different communities, you almost got to take the ratings of 48 different ratings. This is the hard and complex part of the work, right? You almost got to do 48 different ratings to come up with a rating for the state. And so potentially, even in our own state, are there some areas, some policing, right, areas that are doing this well, that could be the model for others, right? And I'm not saying that they're flawless, and I'm not saying that they're perfect, but are there some, right, that we can hold up to be somewhat models for the state? So, we said, so what are the national best practices that we want to implement out of here? So you heard someone say, so there's like pages and pages. There are 6 core areas, if you read this, that they call pillars that were in here, right? One was how we build trust, which we've been talking about a lot tonight. One was policy and oversight. One was dealing with technology and social media. The other pillar is around community policing and crime reduction. The other is around training and education. And the last is around officer wellness and safety. And so if you read through this, I know I start going through this and I'm like, we were talking about there's pages, as I said at the beginning of this. And so if we had to prioritize, from this, not from what just we think, but what from we hear from the community, from what they think, clearly, even in this document, it basically talks about square one is trust. If you don't have trust, right, a lot of this other part isn't built on a strong foundation. I heard some of you say you can't build trust if you don't have relationships, right? And so, is it the chicken or the egg, or how we go about it? But I really need us to be thinking about, what does that look like? Hopefully you guys have this in front of you as we sent it out in advance. How does our local, this is what I said, how does our local Delaware best practices align to the Century 21st guidelines? I said, as it relates to current practices and processes, again, what's working, what's good, what's not working, what is absolutely not working? How do we know that, right? And how will we measure it? How will we know when it is, right? what is it going to take to be able to fix it? Again, there's some recommendations right in here of how you fix some of this stuff without having to recreate. I also really am interested in what does a win look like from law enforcement, from the law enforcement perspective, right? What does a win look like from the community perspective? Then what does a win-win look like? Because I think for success for me, it has to be a win-win, right? It has to be a win on both sides. I also said, who gets to determine success? Is it law enforcement? Is it the community? Is it a hybrid? Is it those that scream the loudest? Like, you know, to me, it's kind of the law, you know, this is kind of the honest conversation. I already talked about what's the elephant in the room, because at the end of the day, you know, it's I also said, you know, will our recommendations ultimately require legislation, which is what, you know, we're charged with, right? What legislation do we need to make with policy? Although I would argue the piece that we talk about with culture and top down, that said in an ideal world, these aren't things that I think law enforcement should be forced to do, even though they may be required. You know, do we not want to create a culture that they are just doing them because they're the right things to do and they're within their value system? So those were my questions. I added a couple, those that you added in at yours at the beginning. And so what I really want to talk about and get your feedback in, again, what additional questions? This is all about questions, no answers, but we really need to figure out, like, what are the burning questions that you think are critical that we're going to have to address? And secondly, also think about data for me. What are some of the data points that you think are critical?
Hey, Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
It's Patrick Ogden. I'd like to chime in on a couple things that Dr. Payne said, and Captain Bushweller hit on this as well. And then you just mentioned it being bold and the elephant in the room and talking about data. I think the success of a police department should be measured in their crime reduction efforts and their community engagement efforts. But I can tell you, probably, I don't know if I want to say the vast majority, but a lot of departments throughout the state, their officers are being evaluated on how many arrests they make and how many citations they issue. And that's where we need to change the mindset. Success should not be based on a police officer going out there and making more arrests. You know, I mean, there's some departments, honestly, that their sole existence depends on how many tickets they give out because they're generating revenue for the town. Police departments should not be in that model where we're making arrests to generate revenue for the town. We should base our success on crime reduction efforts, safety enhancements, and community relations.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's good.
Spot on.
One of the things about that is, I mean, that's one of the very specific recommendations that is in the 21st Century Report, is to change how officers are evaluated away from things like arrests and towards things like their community engagement and things. So one of the first things we need to know in terms of data collection is for each of the 48 jurisdictions, how do they rate on, you know, you could put together a list of the 20 measurable things and ask each department, are you doing this, yes or no? And that'll be one quick way of getting a sense of where we are relative to these recommendations. And the one you just gave is a very specific one that they would be able to answer yes or no what they're doing. But before I let the microphone go, I'll just add one more sort of elephant in the room, is in this subcommittee is only going to make recommendations to the task force itself. Then the task force will need to deliberate and vote on what actually gets done with whatever recommendations we make. And please remember that the task force itself, when we talk about are the right voices in the room, the task force has 0 people representing the impacted community. So there will be 0 people in the room when those deliberations and vote takes place. So if there's anything that we can do to change that at this point, I think it would greatly improve the legitimacy of this entire process in the eyes of the public.
Absolutely. Great suggestion.
This is Gary Downs again, and that's what
I totally agree.
Great suggestion.
Yeah.
This is, sorry.
Yeah. This is Harry Downs, and what Lynn just said is basically what I was saying in the beginning. You know, we really need to get a voice from the community, and they have to have a lot of input in here.
Lynn, I had a question for you. What would it take to change that?
I think it would take the co-chairs of the task force to say that they want to add additional representatives, either that or change out some of the ones that they already made. I mean, the legislation actually listed those that, who was appointing folks from what groups. I know that there were 4 positions that were open from the advocacy community. They could have chosen to fill those with people from the impacted community. They didn't. But what I would recommend is that they actually add positions specifically to bring in folks from the impacted, justice-involved community.
I think that this is Elliot Margulies. Another area of kind of just concrete data and information we need is information about current police practices in those communities. I'm specifically curious about stop and frisk data that identifies race-based patterns in stop and frisk. I can't imagine that concerns about that are not creating one of the biggest wedges between our police and our communities. I don't know how feasible that is until the Transparency Committee makes some changes, but like everyone has said, if we're going to fix the problem, we need to identify the problem. And until we have concrete numbers to identify to what degree that is a problem, then we're kind of working with one hand tied behind our back.
Yes, Ron Handy speaking again. One of the things we definitely have to look at is, does the percentage of police officers that we have by race represent the communities that they serve?
Nice. Yep.
Because we really have to look at that. We can't wait until some of these guys are in college to start recruiting. By that time, either they've had infractions or their mindset has been changed about policing. We need to reach out to a lot of these prospective police officers at an earlier age and get them involved in some positive things where they can view things differently. I tell people a lot of times, our youth see police officers when they're entering a home, taking somebody that they care about, or it's been a major incident and the police coming in and it's a high stress situation. They don't get to see police officers as normal people. I'm dealing with a stress or a trauma, and here these people come in a uniform, removing somebody I care about or something else, and it's not a good interaction. So why would they want to be police officers? So we got to change that narrative.
This is Reginald Daniels speaking. I think one of the most important things is also changing how police are viewed. In Dover, they have done events, but the ones that always stuck out to me were the ones where they were rolling out heavily armored vehicles that they were showing off, or the latest equipment that could be used for lethal force or just enforcement in general. And in seeing that paraded around the street, you look at it and all you can think of is, are they here to protect and serve, or are they behaving like an occupying force? So we need to have that sort of image reworked, and that's obviously going to take time, but we can't have people looking to law enforcement and seeing them behaving almost as if they are an army.
I'm sorry, I just want to chime in one thing. If you are a committee member, we really need your camera on the whole time, as this is a public meeting. So if you are a committee member, if your camera is off, we really need you to turn it on. I just want to give you that reminder. You can be muted because you're not speaking, but we do need your camera on. Thanks.
So this is Allison Avicinio. I kind of want to piggyback off of what Elliot said about data and information that we need from local police departments. I would like to know what each agency's community policing policies are, And I'd also like to know how community policing as an idea is introduced at the academy level, because the tone and the attitude is really set there. And so is community policing a topic that is introduced briefly and brushed aside to focus on fourth and fifth amendment issues that police need to be aware of? Or is it something that gets a lot of focus and attention, and it's an idea that's driven home with the cadets? Or is it something that's not mentioned at all? So I'm really curious about what the individual agencies are doing at the academy level with community policing.
Hey, this is Josh Bushwaller, State Police. I can speak specific to the State Police Academy. I actually teach our community policing course. It's an 8-hour course provided to the recruits. I will tell you that it's typically early on in the academy. In fact, I know Pat Ogden's on here. He follows me when I'm done my class. But usually it's in the first week. And in the first week, to your point, is whether it's a priority or not, the recruits are not in a condition to really pay a lot of attention to the course instruction in the first week, because they're just so exhausted from all the physical activity that's happening and the change that they're going through. But it's an 8-hour course, and it easily could be a bigger commitment. It should be a bigger commitment. We also have the Newcastle County Police Academy, the Wilmington Police Academy, and I can't speak for those agencies. But you're right, it has to start in the beginning with the training. We do have cultural diversity. We do have some other courses that bring in members of the community that talk with the recruits. But as far as driving home the community policing and the engagement and the importance of it, there's an opportunity to do better, no question.
I have Ron Handy, I have a question for you, officer. Is there implicit bias training or questionnaire, whatever, so people can look at some areas that they need to work in so they can strengthen, or is that not part of the training? Because I agree with you, it's 8 hours, but it should be something that goes throughout the entire training to drive home that this is a very important part of the process.
This is Sierra speaking. I want to know how many, what percentage, whatever that looks like, police officers are a part of different organizations in the communities that they're serving, how close they live to the communities that they're supposed to be serving, if they reside in a different area, just how close they are, like physically, interaction-wise, outside of policing, outside of arrests and such things, they are to the people that they're interacting with daily.
This is Elliot Margulies again. So one of the pillars of the 21st century policing report was specifically focused on issues related to officer wellness. I just knowing secondhand and hearing stories about the level of stress and trauma that police officers go and face, and how that can potentially create negative and potentially the worst impacts in community policing. I think it's also important that we get a better idea of what officers are facing, things, and on a related note, what shift times are like. I think that so much of community policing is about these seemingly mundane interactions where you just have to be polite and loving towards a person. But frankly, if you're working a 20-hour shift, it's pretty hard not to be grumpy. So I think it's important for us to know exactly what we're demanding of our police officers here and what sort of resources we're providing to them.
This is Josh again, Bushwaller from the State Police. That's an excellent point, and I can tell you that the mental health and the mental wellness of our troopers is a high priority. In fact, we have a fatigue management program in place to prevent specifically what you're saying. You can only work, we work 12-hour shifts. Our patrol officers work 12-hour shifts, and then they're limited as to how many hours they can work over a 12-hour shift to ensure that they get proper rest in between their work periods. So we have a lot of different resources available to our personnel to deal with the mental issues and stress of the job, from everything from our early warning system that I think someone mentioned that earlier. But we provide resources as far as our critical incident stress management, our EAP, Employee Assistance Program. We have our divisional chaplains. We put an emphasis on the wellness of our troopers. I know the other agencies do as well, but you bring up a great point. But again, I just want to emphasize the fact that this is a state police. We specifically have that fatigue management policy in place to prevent what you were saying could happen if you're working too many hours.
There's also a critical incident stress management team that's in place for departments across the state to debrief high stress situations if officers are involved in a suicide, a fatal crash, something like that, where they can go and officers can kind of debrief that incident confidentially to kind of get things off their chest, which is great. And the other point I wanted to make with regard to training, it's great to talk about academy training, but training needs to be throughout your entire career. And some training needs to be mandated, like on an annual basis. Now, I use my department as an example, and just so you know, some of you might be thinking, well, the chief from the University of Delaware is speaking, and that's a different, set of standards here on a college campus than statewide. But previously, I spent over 20 years with the Delaware State Police. I've worked in all 3 counties throughout my career, and training needs to be ongoing and annual. Like we do annual bias-based profiling training every year, and then we publish our bias-based profiling data to determine how close are we with our enforcement efforts to mirroring the community that we serve. De-escalation training, another hot topic right now. I have officers that have been certified as de-escalation instructors. Just as recently as today, I offered up that training to chiefs statewide that I would send our officers out to do that. Fair and impartial policing, crisis intervention, you name it, like Josh was just talking about, the mental health training, those kind of things. That's just not something that you should do in the academy, and then that's it. It needs to be ongoing every year, and certain topics, such as the ones I mentioned, really need to be every year. We really need to focus on that.
This is Sierra speaking again. Something else I just thought about after just in reading the policing report is how is there data on how community members are evaluating the efforts from police in their different locations and areas in the community. I'm not sure if any such thing exists, but I would hope that that's something that we could look toward. Like how do we, outside of reduce crime, like how do we measure just the different relationships and whether or not things are effective?
So Sarah, I hit on this a little bit in the beginning. Police agencies that are accredited, one of the things that they have to do is send out community surveys. But the problem is, like many people have mentioned, you get the same people from the community that respond to those surveys. But that's one way to get a pulse of your community, is through these citizen surveys that accredited agencies are required to do. But the problem is not every agency in the state is accredited. I think we have 48 departments in the state, and there's only, I don't know, about a dozen of us that are accredited. So, that's another important initiative that I'm pushing on a statewide level to make it mandatory for all agencies to reach accreditation standards through the state of Delaware.
Question. This is Corey Priest. I was wondering if there is like strength-based assignments given to officers, right? So I know certain community police officers who just don't looks uncomfortable out there in the community. Mm-hmm. And are there strength-based or skill set-based assignments given to officers who wants to go into community policing or SROs or whatever the specialized assignment is?
Hey Corey, this is Josh again from the state police. And to answer your question, yes, there is, but there's processes put in place for someone who wants to work in a specialized unit, whether it be school resource officer or community policing unit or a detective. There's also requirements that they have to meet to be able to be eligible for those positions. And typically those requirements are the skill sets that you're talking about, that they must, have good communication skills, must be able to relate well with others, must show a sincere interest in their engagement in the community, must demonstrate certain things. So in a nutshell, that yes, but we all know that that always doesn't happen. You do end up with the wrong people and the wrong assignments at times. And very quickly, I want to note to your point about the community policing. You're talking about some community policing officers that you notice. Every officer on every department should be a community police officer. You shouldn't have to be assigned to a community policing unit to practice community policing. You should be doing community policing whether you're a detective, whether you're a SRO, whether you're a patrol trooper, whether you're a undercover drug investigator, and it's that mindset again. A lot of agencies have a community policing unit that satisfies their need and goal of having community policing. But really, this should be an entire organizational mindset where all officers are engaged in community policing.
Hey, one thing I think it's important that Corey and Josh just hit on is that school resource officer program. In a lot of parts of the country, that's being eliminated right now. And I can tell you, going back to what Ron Handy said earlier about trying to recruit young men and women into this profession at an early age, I can tell you as a police chief, I have interviewed countless people who have applied for the position of police officer. And they have told me that the reason that they became inspired to become a police officer is because of their interactions with their school resource officer. So I think that's a valuable program that we should not even contemplate getting rid of.
This is Elliot Margulies. Just again, a more focused data question. A lot of the critiques that I have read about in various studies related to community policing is that in areas that are community policing or that are community policed, that individuals have higher likelihoods of being charged with low-level misdemeanors. So again, I don't know what data is available because right now we don't get access to any of it. But to the degree that that data is available, if we want to assess how our community is going to benefit or be impacted by community policing, we need to know how they're being policed currently. The impacts of those low-level misdemeanors are very frequently life-changing for my clients as a public defender. Just one little misdemeanor can mean they lose their job because they're at court for a day, they miss a mortgage payment or a rent payment, and I don't have the numbers to know how frequently that's happening, but I think we really need to take a look at it. And somebody pointed out in the first area we were conversing is that it would be a good idea to give our officers the opportunity to use some pre-charge diversion measures. Right now, I think that the police have very few options to do that. And I think that part of the solution needs to allow the officers to be lenient when they need to be or when they feel appropriate. Similarly, in terms of the school resource officers, I don't know the numbers, and it seems like very valuable to the extent that I think it was Officer Ogden pointed out in terms of recruiting people. But again, one of the critiques there is that schools that have police resource officers have higher incidence of charging crimes amongst their students, and it advances that school to prison pipeline. So while we absolutely need to consider what the officer said as a benefit of those, I think we also need to consider the ways that it can be detrimental, and we need data to do that.
This is going back to the issue about training, and this is Reginald Daniels speaking. I fully intend and believe that all of us should go and see what these trainings are like in person, if there's any cycles of cadets coming in. But one thing I am concerned about in having this idea of the police not fearing, or the community not fearing the police in turn should not fear the community.
Right.
I know that there's a lot of discussion about a controversial practice known as warrior training. I don't know if that's practiced in the state of Delaware, and I am curious if that's practiced, and if so, what we can do to move cadets and officers away from that into a better sort of conflict resolution method of teaching and instruction.
I'll go back to
I have two questions. Oops. So the two questions, one is, would we have an opportunity to actually do a survey to the 48 jurisdictions to see how well they are already implementing or have implemented the various best practices or recommendations in the 21st century report? Is that something that we could do, is one of my questions, to find out where we are already.
It's already been done.
Oh, then I would love to.
There was a survey that was put together by the task force probably 2 weeks ago now. It's been sent out to every agency, and it's been pushed back to Alexa.
Could you share a copy of even just the questions? I assume you don't have all the data back yet, but if you could even share that questionnaire, that survey, that would be helpful.
I know Alexa's on the call. Is that something you can share with the group, Alexa?
Yeah, she's muted. My second question is that about the scope of this subcommittee, because I think it does go beyond just the 21st century policing report, and also talked about an expansion of citizen-involved public safety outreach across the state. And I want to understand if that scope includes implementing community-based violence intervention programs, specifically to fund programs that are community-based to try to deal with violence in ways that are not just police-based. Is that part of the scope? Am I interpreting that language correctly?
So we got your questions. We're capturing all the questions, not to answer them tonight, but just at this point, we just want to make sure we understand what the questions are, and we'll try to answer them in some FAQ or come back to it. Those are great questions, though, Lynn.
So this is Corey Priest. I think another question we should ask is how much the Safe Streets, Operation Safe Streets and Governor's Task Force contribute to the mistrust between communities and policing. Now, I don't know how you find that number out, but there's a lot of angst around Governor's Task Force, Operation Safe Streets, in our communities.
Another thing I'd like to know would be how much funding is being diverted to the police departments to help with community policing. Is there enough, and how is it being distributed depending on Newcastle, Sussex, Kent, city versus rural department? Do the police departments have enough to, implement any plans that we have or that we recommend? Or if not, how can we ask the legislature to appropriate those funds appropriately?
Those are great questions. I think I heard earlier, I think some of that might even tie into, funding needed. If the requirement is, everyone needs to be accredited, there's a cost to be able to do that, right? So how does it get funding, or what's the recommendation associated? Well, I'm sure we may have a few things that may require funding.
Ron Handy, I got a question. Even with that data, can we look at the data difference between the police agencies that are accredited versus the ones that are not accredited?
I want to bring up the issue of undocumented people, and the fact that a lot of times, people fear the police for a lot of reasons, but for the Latino community, a lot of times it's also the fear of deportation and that police might be working with ICE. And I know that, here in Delaware, we're quite lucky to have police that are not, punitive in that sense. But I think any opportunity to make that clear that, you're here to help and not to get people's loved ones taken away. I think that kind of messaging is important, and any opportunity where you can work with people that represent those groups is important, and to make that stance clear that, you know, you're not here to, you know, send them over to ICE or to report them to ICE. So that's very important. A lot of people, on top of the pandemic, have been affected by deportations that have left their families without incomes, and which just makes the problem worse. So I think it's always important to keep that in mind. And even, I mean, we've had events where we were collaborating with the city or the county, and we found out that people, once they saw the logo, I mean, they just don't know. I mean, they don't know if it's the city or the county or the police or ICE. To them, a logo that looks like that badge or that official is just scary. So all that kind of stuff needs to be thought about when it comes to marketing materials and messaging.
One more issue that I know is important to my clients as a public defender and to the community at large is our state's civil asset forfeiture practice. So I think that data related to how much, how big the pot is, what are the funds being taken, and where it's going would be extremely helpful as well.
Yeah, and in addition to the civil asset forfeiture data, you know, fees and fines related, like, so court fees and fines that have accumulated, particularly for poor populations in Delaware, excessive fees and fines. If we can get better data on that, that'd be useful as well.
So you mean on the fines that we're charging, or the fines that each of the, that's part of the, that has become the revenue, or each one of the 48 policing? Is that what you want to say?
So I mean court.
Oh, court fines, court fines. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, some of it is related to what's going on with police in the community, but in terms of just the court fees and fines that are hanging over a lot of residents.
Okay.
I can tell you that asset forfeiture will be very easy to determine. That fund is managed by the Department of Justice. There's a quarterly meeting where police agencies then go and it's called the State Law Enforcement Assistance Fund. They go and submit a grant application to take money out of those assets that are seized. So that's all through the Department of Justice. Should be very easy to get that information for you.
So we're coming up on the half hour that we're going to soon go into public comment. Any other questions that we want to make sure we answer, and or data? We have a lot of, some of it overlap, but a lot of data already. Thanks so much for your input. The list is pretty long. What else might we think about? Can I just ask this way too? I mean, it's hurt. So what would you perceive, what is the big elephant?
Mm-hmm. So one more thing to the point of questions that we need to ask as well, just to piggyback on Laura when she was talking about immigrant communities. Another population that I wanted us to take a look at is also data in regards to police interaction with LGBTQ as well as transgender individuals as well. So that's just to add to the list of populations that we need to look at interactions and training as well.
So question, Ron Handy again. Do we have anybody we can have as a third party to actually explain some of the rules and policies that the police officers have to go by? Because a lot of times we have interactions where you have somebody in the community stating what they believe is their right or a certain law or a certain statute, and it may not be true, but in their mind it's true. And then the police officer, the tension is now raised with the police officer. Now I have to be in charge and I have to enforce it when a person is saying, well, I didn't do anything and this is what I was told. If we can eliminate those misunderstandings, we wouldn't have as many interactions, negative interactions that we have.
I also think the elephant in the room is police tactics of
Ms. Handy, this is Sherry.
Wait a minute, Sherry. I think Corey was just finishing his thought. Go ahead, Corey.
Yeah, I think the elephant in the room really, in terms of our communities across the state, is the tactics of Operation Safe Streets and Governor's Task Force. I think if their tactics are going to remain the same, there's always going to be mistrust with communities and police officers. I mean, and police officers.
Corey, Corey, can you talk a little bit about your concerns related to Operation Safe Streets and all of that? Just to fill some.
Just make sure, Corey, everyone knows what it is.
Yeah, so Operation Safe Streets and Governor's Task Force is really the police municipality. So Operation Safe Streets is Wilmington Police Department and probation and parole going out together, with, to I wouldn't say hold accountable probationers, but they're out there looking for people on their caseload, probationers on their caseload. Thing is that if me, a law-abiding citizen, is with a probationer who's on a Safe Streets list, then I'm kind of held responsible too for this person. If I'm in a car with someone driving, he's on a Safe Streets caseload, then they can just pull me over because he's in my car, and full reign to search whatever. And so just tactics around search and seizure, the Fourth Amendment. They circumvent the Fourth Amendment on a lot of these encounters. And sometimes it's unfair practices, and the community in Safe Streets really don't, and Governor's Task Force really don't connect with each other, and just because of those unfair practices, and if that's not ever addressed, then we're going to be still having this conversation years and years from now, I believe.
Thanks.
Sorry, Sherry, you're saying something?
What is the real elephant in we all know what the major definition or what the meat is of what community is supposed to be. Big question is why does it look different in different parts of the limited differently in Wilmington versus Milford versus Claymont versus Dover? So the biggest question is, yes, we all know what community policing is, community within the state.
That was a bit scratchy for me. Was anybody else having a hard time hearing that?
Yeah, it was for me too. I was waiting for her. I think it's just her
It was a
internet.
little choppy.
Yeah, it was just going in and out. I think what she was saying, and if I caught it, but Sherry might clarify, that the big elephant in the room around community policing is why does it look, Sherry, that was you talking, right? I think she was saying, why does it look different in different communities across the state? Is that what you were saying, Sherry?
Absolutely. What it is. Can you hear me now? Is that better? No.
Yeah. Looks like you're frozen.
Yeah, I am.
Okay. Okay. So what I'm going to do, if you're good, is I'm going to have us transition, Sarah, to the community comment section, the public comment, and you can go from there.
So anyone that would like to give public comment, please utilize the raise hand function at this. I will be calling on you one by one, and you will have a 2-minute time limit to speak. Aaron Goldner, you are now permitted to speak. You have 2 minutes.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can.
Okay, I just have 2 things. One is everybody's not speaking directly into their microphones. So I had my volume up all the way and was still having trouble hearing some people because they're so far away from their microphones. And then the second thing is listening to the elders in Wilmington and other areas, but mostly Wilmington, like Mr. Ron Handy and others, even people older than him. He's not that old. They talk about community policing, and there's actually multiple practices and approaches to community policing, which I did not know until I started listening to the elders. And it was good information to help me understand. I have some criminal justice education and some community education, and always learned about community policing and thought I knew exactly what it was, and found out there's multiple approaches. And one of them is definitely the community taking on some responsibilities and not putting it all on the police. And I thought that's important to bring to the table and understand when we are talking about community policing, that there's different definitions. And if we can, I think what Yasser was saying, bringing community members from different parts of town to the table to discuss solutions, and how policing looks to them in their own community, and when the police come to their community, how do they police their community when the police aren't there? And what does that look like? And then what does, true community policing look like as a department of police agency? And then what are the similarities and differences, and how can they be connected? Because I think sometimes people are talking about two different things and don't even know it. But that's really all I wanted to say, and thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goldner. Kyle Shepard, you are now permitted to speak. You have 2 minutes.
How you doing? A quick comment I just want to echo is just, I hope that this subcommittee looks into a clear and concise publication on how increased or quote, like more professionalized police presence actually equates to a reduction of citizen complaints, or their overall betterment of quality of life. Like, what does that look like by police district? Another comment was just an agreement that instituting a reflection of community residents where they actually have the highest rates of police misconduct and those complaints, again, by that police district. It's just, I just echo including people within the work of the respective subcommittees of this task force. Regarding success looks like, I agree with Ron Handy, I think Lynn Keelhorn, and a few others that funding services that are community directed, not just community driven. Sometimes it starts off as community, but it just goes right back to agencies who've always been doing that work. So work like intervention, housing, things that address the socio-emotional needs of citizens, and funding those things first and figuring out where the budget lies after that, excuse me. I would also like to see like more metrics on what public safety looks like prior to violence and harm being caused, not law enforcement or police showing up essentially after the fact or after something occurs. Also success looking like probably a decriminalization on poverty in class, in race and other identities who often are most impacted by law enforcement or structural violence, so to speak. In closing, I think I would like to see this group identifying quarterly or annually law enforcement agencies showing how their budget impacts the overall social determinants of health. Basically, how is their existence improving the lives of people, especially when the Division of Public Health shows that certain institutions and agencies contribute to the reduction of life of people, specifically those Black and brown. Thank you.
Thank you.
Keith Stack, you are now permitted to speak. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Keith Stack. I live in Milton. I am speaking as a private citizen, although I am a member of the Subcommittee on Transparency and Accountability. A couple of points. One, I think it's really important that that the disadvantaged communities are a focus of these initiatives, especially the large immigrant communities, the undocumented communities in the state, especially in Sussex County. I know from working on social justice issues down here that I think that's a community that has mixed outreach too, and you need to make sure that when you reach out to these communities and to others, that it's in their communities to make them feel comfortable, less threatened, but you also need to make sure you do it at times when people are available. Trying to do it, 9 to 5 when most people are working is not practical, and I think that's up and down the state. And another comment that I have, the elephants in the room are two, the way I see it. One is resources. We're talking money. How much money is a state willing to commit to major changes if that's what it takes, and time, because looking at these complex problems, trying to shoehorn them into coming up with a solution in the next 3 months isn't going to work. I think that practically speaking, some of these projects, things may be able to be addressed more quickly than others, and others are going to take much longer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stack. Lorenzo Hopkins, you're now permitted to speak. You have 2 minutes. Mr. Hopkins?
I'm sorry, I thought I was unmuted already. I'm sorry, I apologize. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I heard a lot of commentary today, and I heard I think Ms. Goldner just indicated that she wasn't sure about community policing, didn't know there were so many aspects of it. I've been in the business for a long time, and I'm going to tell you, some of the most critical pieces that are always missing is communication. Does the community know what's going on? How things are being implemented? I heard people mention about safe streets. A lot of people don't even know what the rights are, what safe streets are for. In DC, what we do, I live in Delaware, work in DC, what we do is we have neighborhood commissioners. They are the mouthpiece and the voice for communities. So if you're trying to get communities engaged, we may want to look at a concept such as that, where you have elders in the neighborhood can go and pull people in and be that mouthpiece and have different meetings throughout the neighborhood. Also, I think we really should focus on one elephant in the room is community trauma. If you have a police officer who deals with trauma every day and a community that deals with trauma every day, when those two entities collide, you're going to have something that combustible happen. So we really got to start talking about when something happens in a neighborhood, how do we respond as not just police, but as a community? Do we get trauma training or trauma help for young people? I'm often tell this brief story that if you're a kid at 3, 4, or 5, and you see your first your father assaulting your mother, by the time you're going to school 6 or 7, you see your first serious assault. By the time you're 8 or 9, you see your first dead body, and then we wonder why someone's carrying a gun at 13. So we have to start dealing with that deep-seated trauma that's impacting on communities, not just by I can't say this by law enforcement, but by what happened in our communities also. So we really got to talk about doing that piece also. Thank you.
Anyone else wishes to give public comment, please utilize the raise hand function at this time. Cynthia Smith, you're now permitted to speak. You have 2 minutes. Cynthia Smith.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Okay, my name is Cynthia Smith. I just wanted to say that
if we're going to have this successful subcommittee, I think we need to have a buy-in on judges, lawyers in the community, because of the fact that somehow if we depend on our law enforcement to actually do their own thing, but when it comes to judges, we have some failures of the system. So what I can say is that we should allow public comment to testify, so, and encourage, so we could actually identify the problems in the community. And I would like in the near future to actually get in advance when is the meeting gonna be. At the same time, I would like to testify, to have my testimony in advance, so people could actually, I mean, the members of subcommittee would be able to read my testimony. So, because we don't have much time, but 2 minutes. Thank you.
I believe that concludes public comment, but any person that wishes to give public comment that was not able to do so this evening can do so by submitting their comments to leotaskforce@delaware.gov. And that's leotaskforce@delaware.gov.
So I just want to thank you for all of your comments. And there was lots of comments, and I still kind of go back to Yasser's comment earlier, right? Trying to get a pulse from this group. So I can tell it's not a shy group and at all. And we definitely, this group has thoughts about what we should do. You know, I think the challenge will be trying to come to some consensus around what's the what that we need to be able to focus on, because it is broad and it is lofty. And so one of the things that I'll do is try to take, again, all of our questions. You have some pre-work in between, try to go through, like, here's the questions that we have. I'll probably work with Sherry. We need to debrief a little bit, but thinking that we probably need your input to narrow down, like, you know, from your perspectives. I'll try to group some of these questions if there are some common themes around them, to be able to see, like, where do we want to spend our time and focus on, like, where's our real focus. And there's definitely lots of data sources that I heard. And so I will, I know some of the other committees are also pulling together data. On some of the ones we were talking about, hiring practices and alike, there is a workforce development subcommittee that is looking at those issues. But I will try to, I work to pull together the data piece, because I think we do want to be data driven, and we want to have real clarity about understanding what currently, what's the status. So we heard there's like a survey being that's already been, it's for people to get a pulse of how they rated themselves, self-selected, right? Self-rated. So it'll be interesting to see how people think they fared against the 21st century policing guidelines. We also, I heard on some of the stuff, when we break it down, we'll try to look at it between those that are accredited versus those that aren't. We can look at it by county. And so we'll try to pull together as much data as we can. A couple of you, I know data is your thing. Like, you know, this is the level of the expertise, you breathe it and live it every day. And so I will be following up with a couple of you that have noted that. If you, in the chat section, if you know that you are for sure, if you would just put if you just note that for me in the chat section. So just in case I don't miss anyone, it didn't come across on the data that we tried to obtain from you, because I think there's some work that's going to have to happen in between to distill this down. We thought that we'd spend the next, you know, this is kind of a fast-paced moving expectation. I understand we have by spring that we need to be prepared to come with recommendations. So it doesn't give lots of time. We also had talked to the chairs of the larger group and our staff support that they thought monthly, that we couldn't meet any sooner than once a month, given some other responsibilities. And so we do have the meetings, at least for this group, tentatively planned through the end of the year. So we set them up for October, November, December. I like having dates in advance for planning purposes so that it is on our calendar. I know they had some concerns about putting it too far out in front of the public in case we have to change it, but I will make sure that you get those dates. And so that they're in the midst. I think, what we said is Sherry and I don't plan to change the dates unless there's, if there's some real emergency, right, that we have to be able to adjust. But I try to set things so that we can all plan accordingly and that we can work towards it. So, we'll get the dates out so that you have them. We'll need to distill the questions into some themes to think about how do we send that out to you between now and the next meeting, thinking about what's the, how do we begin to prioritize? There's lots of data. So I'm actually thinking maybe at the next meeting to be able to figure out if we can't present the data, some of the findings from the data in a format that might make sense, that might be able to help us to think about what the next is. We also thought there's a couple of things that heard loud and clear. And I think it might have even been someone on the comment section, that once we see the data, to be able to see like where are the most complaints or the issues within which communities, and to definitely make sure, while we want all voices, as we heard, up and down the state, but specifically, I think we want to do maybe additional outreach into specific communities. And so we need to think through. I could use your help really thinking about, I heard it also that said, people may not participate on these Zoom meetings. They may not be coming to us. So how will we go out in the community? How will we make sure that their voices are heard? How will we engage them in this process? Is a really big bucket that we need to address and solve for, and make sure we've taken this into consideration. The easier part is I do want us to also to hear from additional law enforcement. And so it's much easier to bring them to us in some of our meetings, to allow some times where we can have a panel with some of the our chiefs throughout the state to be able to have some conversation. I was going to try to do that in October, but I'm really thinking maybe October we need to drill down a little bit and more into the data and to get clarity around what's the question that we really want to make sure that we use that time wisely. So that is a lot. I'm taking lots of notes. I think, there's a lot from this group to distill down to be able to get us to make sure, right, that we're not coming back with the norm. I also heard real clarity around even the public comment section, right, around how do we make sure that there is really part of the elephant in the room is, what is the amount of money that it's going to take to deliver on this and the time that it's going to take to execute on it. And so there are several elephants that I think that, if we're going to be serious about this, that we're going to have to be able to have hard conversations about the realities of things that's confronting us. And so if you have not, and part of, remember, the data that you requested that will come to you in the next round is, please go back and look at this report. I know it's lots of pages. The summary of the survey may help significantly because it may narrow it down. But a lot of the stuff that we talked through, as you heard, I think it was from Lynn, that a lot of the recommendations are in the back, right? And it wasn't just recommendations, but it was also talking about how it could potentially get executed. So I think the more we become familiar with what best practices have already been identified, the more we may be able to use this as a guide in our discussions as we as it's part of the charge. It's in our charge, right? That we want to try to be able to identify practices and policies that align us to the 21st century guidelines. Okay. Sherry, I know you had a hard time with your internet. Are you okay to you want to add anything? And does anyone on this group want to have any other feedback, thoughts as we're trying to think through how we of next steps?
Can you hear me? I just have a quick question. Did all the committees receive the 21st century report?
No, I think some of them had different ones depending upon the work, because someone told me their document was 140 pages. So maybe it did, but it's for their section.
Okay, I see.
Ours specifically was on the community policing.
All right. Thank you.
Michelle, can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, great. Thank you. You repeated my comment earlier, and I apologize. Just my internet's been acting up today. But like I was saying, the biggest elephant in the room to me, being a retired police officer, is that we all understand what community policing is. It's just how we apply it and the different definitions each department may have. That it means different to DSP versus Newcastle County. So it's just how it's applied in the community. But I thank you, Michelle, for leading us tonight, and everyone on the discussion. Definitely a robust conversation that we had around community engagement and community policing that we had. And I welcome the comments that we're going to have. And I also welcome the opportunity to have the police officers, colonels, and the chiefs of the other agencies come in and explain their philosophies as well.
One other thing that it would be good if we could get figured out before we meet next time is where is the dividing line between topics that we will cover and the other subcommittees will cover, because many of the things in the 21st century report are actually topics that I think are covered by these other committees, you know, some of the transparency and accountability pieces and other things. So getting clarity around which things we're responsible for and which ones will be covered elsewhere would be good.
Great point. And we can definitely do that.
Yeah, and that's why I asked about the other committees, because I know there's a section in there about training. So that could easily apply to the work.
I think that is under theirs.
Okay.
So if you are all good, let me say something. I gave you back 7 minutes of your life this evening. I want to thank you again for your lively discussion. We look forward, Sherry and I look forward to working with you. We are both totally open for ideas and thoughts. I think, you know, this was the easier meeting, right? As we have to narrow down and have some conversations and different thoughts. And we're going to have to take all of these ideas and really get to a point to get more focused about, you know, how we're going to approach this work and what is that we're trying to be able to achieve. So some stuff's going to have to happen in between meetings. And so I thank you in advance. I always say, you know, have a great night. And I usually in my staff meetings go off and do great things.
Thank you.
Will do.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Everybody have a good night.
Buenas noches.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.